Welcome to another episode of the RAG podcast. And for those of you who don't know, the RAG stands for Recruitment Agency Growth. Since early 2019, I've been interviewing the most successful and innovative recruitment owners to learn how they rose to the top of their game. In season 7, I'm going to be having raw, authentic, and insightful conversations with agency owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, people across the industry. And I want to be learning about their ambitions, what's happening behind the scenes in their agencies today, and their plans to navigate difficult market conditions. I'll be bringing you the latest and greatest recruitment stories every single week on Wednesdays at noon across multiple platforms. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the RAG podcast. On this week's show, I'm not only joined by Henry the dog behind me this week, but I'm also joined by Leo Hewett. Leo is the founder of Core3, a accountancy and finance recruitment business headquartered in Bristol with 10 employees, only 2 years old, but have just reached just under $1 million in revenue in their second year. What I love about this business is they're all about making a social impact. They are a B Corp registered business, and they give away 3% of revenue, not profit, 3% of revenue to people and the planet to make an impact. In this episode, we talk about Leo's journey from growing up with a mother who had 40 years of running her own recruitment firm, to getting into recruitment, then working in a publicly listed business, Robert Half, and then taking the plunge in the just after the pandemic to launch his own business because he wanted to make a big impact. The way he's running his business is truly remarkable. It's to be commended, and it just shows how amazing this sector is and the people within it. Without further ado, Leo, welcome to the RAG podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. One podcast host to another. Someone who...
Well, I haven't got as many notches on my belt as you, Sean.
I'm sure you're on the right trajectory, mate. Well, look, you can see in the background, Henry is asleep, the French bulldog. He's not normally in the room because I've got 2 dogs. But today I've just took one to the groomers. So I thought, you know what? Henry can be in the room for the podcast because he's the one who usually doesn't cause any issues. But you might see a bit of movement in the background. Don't be alarmed.
It'd be a nightmare if my dogs were in the background. I couldn't get away with that.
Yeah, well, the cockapoo is an absolute psychopath. Like the second that someone walks past my office, he just goes nuts. Leo, I've done a brief introduction, mate. I can never do it justice. So quickly, before we get into your story, just give us the bird's eye view of the business. So who are you? Who is the company? What do you do? How many people? Where are you based? That kind of stuff. And then we'll go and do the detail after.
Cool. So we're Core3. We're a B Corp purpose-driven recruitment business. We've been going 2 years now. We specialise just in finance and accounting, predominantly in the Southwest. So our headquarters is in Bristol. Mm-hmm. We've recently launched London with plans to launch our London office soon.
Amazing. And how many people you got?
10 of us.
In how long?
Now. 2 years.
Yeah, that's gone fast.
Yeah, it wasn't the plan to sort of grow that quickly, but we've been lucky, I think, with the people that we've managed to bring on board. So if you get good people, you got to bring them on, right?
Got to go for it. Well, mate, I'm so excited to unpack this. We met a few years ago in Bristol. I went and met the guys over at G2 and then or G2V, and then John Blackburn was someone I knew, and he introduced me to you, and we all had a few drinks, and Chris O'Connell was there, and Bristol's a really cool little recruitment hub, actually, isn't it? Like, it's not a huge place, but there seems to be a lot of agencies, quite a tight community down there.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's an awesome city. I mean, I lived in London for a couple of years after uni, but I find Bristol's almost that perfect balance between where I went to uni in Cardiff.
Right.
That was maybe a little bit too small. London, a little bit too big. Bristol was just a nice sort
Are you from Bristol originally?
Happy. No, I was born in Birmingham, actually.
Right. So where did you go to school?
It's a school called Old Swinford in Stourbridge, so in the Black Country. I've managed to lose the accent.
Yeah, you
just
have.
about,
I thought you sound more Bristol than the Black Country, I think.
Yeah, I did actually grow up in Birmingham. I grew up in Worcestershire,
right? So
not like in the mix of it, but yeah, a lot of my mates are from there, like John and people that you know from that sort of Stourbridge area.
So John's not a Bristol boy either.
No, not at all.
Right. So that's why I thought you were from Bristol, because I thought you and him were both from Bristol. Right. So what brought you to Bristol? Because you went to Cardiff Uni and it was close enough.
Yeah, it's a funny story, actually, and John's part of it again. So we went to school together, and he was in Bristol Uni, I was in Cardiff Uni. there was a really good hip hop night every Wednesday.
Right.
So me and a few friends, one of them was actually one of the now directors at Robert Half, used to go up every Wednesday to this hip hop night, stay over at John's house. Got to know the city then. And yeah, just sort of always been in the back of my mind, even after moving to London. Then we went traveling, then just landed in Bristol really. And it wasn't a plan to be here forever, but I love it. I haven't looked back.
Amazing. And you, you started the business down there, the B Corp stuff. We can get into that. I feel like everyone in Bristol are like more, there's a lot of consciousness of that sustainability down in Bristol. Again, is that by design? Like, why is it such a conscious city, do you think?
Good question, really. I think there's a lot of the big sort of creative sector, big arts sector, a lot of startup, scale-up community, and especially in the tech space that are starting to think in that way. But it's always had a bit of a almost bohemian feel to it. There's a lot of vegan cafes and restaurants and things like that, and there was all over the press for the Black Lives Matter movement and what happened with pulling down the statue. And I think it's always been quite a forward-thinking city, really, which is great when you're a B Corp business. And it's good that there's a community of more forward-thinking recruitment businesses developing as well. And I know there's B Corps all over the UK now. There's quite a few in Bristol actually, so it's nice to see.
There's definitely something going on over there that's more conscious than everywhere
Something
else.
in the water.
Something in the water, mate. You're drinking it right now. Tell us, Leo. I don't want to go into huge detail of your pre-ownership experience, but how did you get into recruitment? Because I've seen on your LinkedIn you did the whole traveling trip that I did, where you went to like Southeast Asia and stuff. Was it post that trip that you got into the industry?
Yeah, and it was almost by accident, really, because I almost wanted to avoid recruitment for as long as I could, because my mum has actually had her own recruitment business for 40 years.
Wow.
It's called Hewett Recruitment. She's now sold it to my sister.
Wow.
And one of the other directors there. So, yeah, it's in the family, really.
What type of recruitment do they do?
So they do a bit of everything. They started out doing sort of industrial and clerical. So, a lot of steel toe cap boot temps and clerical temps. Now they've sort of diversified a little bit into things like IT, bit of finance, bit of HR, bit of exec. And funnily enough, they just got B Corp as well. So, that was sort of almost what put me on a different path, because I wanted to make my own path.
Yeah.
I thought, going into the family business was the easy option. Very nice having, your name above the door and everything else. But I always wanted to just try and find my own way. And I've always enjoyed using that sort of more creative side of my brain. So I started out in marketing after I graduated, and then went traveling, came back, and just sort of fell into recruitment. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I felt that I got as senior as I could within marketing at the time. I was sort of running a UK marketing manager for a small student events company. And I reached a bit of a ceiling there. I just reported into the two founders. And then, so I got back and just thought, how can I build a bit of a career here? So had a few friends in recruitment, and we're really similar, like John, like Adam, there's a few of us, Alex, in my sort of friendship group. They're like, Leo, you should give it a go. So I did, and I joined Michael Page, because I wanted to go somewhere where I'd get a really good grounding and good training. Yeah. And then quite quickly after that, moved to Robert Half. I was only at Michael Page for 9 months, then moved to Robert Half, and then I ended up there for best part of a decade.
Yeah. Best part of 10 years. What did your mum say when you got into recruitment? Did she go up, knew that'd happen, or?
Yeah, we're really similar, mum and I. She's a massive role model for me. She raised me as a single mum,
right?
And she's instilled a lot of the values in me that, is part of the reason why I've set up a purpose-driven business. But yeah, so we're really, really similar. So she wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
I was pretty rubbish to begin with at recruitment, to be fair. Very robotic on the phone, and it took me a while to find my own voice, and sort of inject my own personality into how I did it. But yeah, then I sort of quickly got into the swing of things once I nailed that. It was when I joined Robert Half, really. Had a director called Chris Lawton, absolute legend, and he he just told me, Leo, stop putting on that sort of professional film, just be you, inject your personality. And I did. And then funnily enough, people
it's all
buy
about
from
that,
don't
isn't
they?
it? It's all about the leadership you get, I think. Like the amount of people who tell me they've had like a bad experience in recruitment and it always comes down to the environment they were in and the people they were surrounded by didn't work for them or whatever. Like, and if you get the right boss who believes in you, I don't really know many people who don't do well when they feel like they're surrounded by good people. When it comes to just going back to your childhood, like you said, your mum was a single mother, and you're similar to her. She's an entrepreneur. I guess what did you see from her behaviors, from a trait perspective, that maybe rubbed off on you? And the only reason I ask that is because, like, I think there's a lot of people listening that'll have young kids, including me. And when you're there, like, going about your day job, building a business, you don't really know what they're watching and what they're seeing and what kind of impact you're going to have. Hopefully, you believe it'll be good. But there's a fear there that you're going to end up creating quite soft, entitled children because they've got quite a good life, and you're earning good money and you're producing good things, and your house is cool, or you're going on holidays or whatever. What was it like for you?
We came from a place of privilege, definitely, in my upbringing. She was very successful and still is. She's the High Sheriff of Worcestershire now, which is pretty cool. Work ethic, I've just watched her from a distance, what it takes to run a business. And there is a balance there. I was often, you had nannies and, au pairs or whatever, and I was always in the after school clubs and everything else. But I saw, what it took. There's never such a situation where she didn't have time for me, I guess. I felt it was a good balance, but it gave me that entrepreneurial spirit. I've always wanted to have my own business at some point. It took me, 15 years to find the courage to finally do it. So I guess it's that work ethic and that graft. She's always been a connector. Yeah. She's always been that sort of person in an event where she's walking the floors and shaking the hands, and everybody knows her, and she's the name in Worcestershire for recruitment. Yeah. So that sort of relationship focus and that ability to connect and network, she was just constantly doing it all the time. So it sort of came into me through osmosis almost. And then finally, it's that the values and the purpose behind what she was doing. She was always looking for ways to make an impact with her local community, whether it was charity work, volunteering, working as a patron of the hospice, raising amazing amounts of money for local good causes. So that's where, for me, after a while within a big corporate, I started to feel like, I know I can make a difference locally to my team, but I can't really make it, a huge difference, like a societal impact here. I want to create something where I'm in control of that, and I can actually sort of take it that next step further.
That's incredible.
So they're the three things, really.
That's incredible. You don't really. I think you're the first person I've ever interviewed in 5 years that's probably alluded to that being the reason they've thought they need to go on their own. Most people get frustrated for various reasons, or they're just super excited about doing it themselves. They reach a point where they're not learning. I'm sure you went through all those as well, but I've never heard anyone say the ability to make an impact felt more achievable and greater through their own endeavor, which I think is really cool. Let's just step back a little bit. So you mentioned you were at Robert Half for 10 years or just under. Without going into the detail, how did your career progress? What different jobs did you take on in that period of time?
So I fast-tracked fairly quickly there. So I came in as a sort of senior consultant. After 1 year, I was division manager, looking after the qualified finance team. And then after 18 months, then I was a senior manager. So I was looking after 2 division managers with the part qual and the qual team. And then after 18 months or 2 years, I became a senior manager, which was then looking after all perm lines of business. And then it was another couple of years, associate director, looking after temp and perm, I believe. And then it became a market director role, which was in charge of a whole market, including temp, perm, all lines of business. So HR, finance, tech, exec, temp and perm across the Southwest and Wales. So I had a couple of branches that I was looking after by the time I left.
What was it that kept you there for so long, do you think?
A combination of things. I think it's the people And Robert Half is a great place if you're a good performer. You know, they treat you like royalty. You're really well looked after. If you're in that top 3% or 5%, it feels like an amazing place. And you know, the progression and the development that I got was second to none. And every time, you know, I got itchy feet, there's like, here you go, here's another opportunity, and here you go, here's another one. And it was, funny enough, just before I resigned, they put another insane opportunity on my table, and I was like, oh my God, this could be,
What was it?
something awesome. Probably a little bit of confidentiality around it, and I like to respect, you know, boundaries there. But it was a role which, you know, it would take me internationally. It's a bigger role, and it was one of those which, when I looked at it, it would take me further away from my family.
Right.
So that was also, you know, a deciding factor. I'd reached as senior as I could without having to sacrifice my family.
What have you got kids?
So yeah, I got a little girl. She's 6.
Wow.
Knocking on 7. And you know, that she's a massive part of my life, and I don't want to be an absent father.
No.
You know, I didn't have a dad myself, really. You know, he was an alcoholic. And, you know, I purposely don't want that for Esme, if that makes sense. So that was a big deciding factor. Yeah, definitely.
So you had her in the Robert Half days, right? So
yeah.
And how did they respond to you, you know, becoming a father, and how did they treat that? Because I think some recruitment companies have been great with that flexibility around being a dad, you know, and like you say, back in the day, being a dad probably wasn't really a thing that most recruitment companies even thought about. It's like you still do all the same things you've always done. Women, you know, the mother does the work. Whereas, you know, fathers are, I mean, including myself, you know, I see it as a really big part of my life, big job, and it's not something I want to sacrifice for my, you know, for the business. So how were they set up to cater for you in that respect?
I think, like all big corporate listed businesses, it's very dependent on who you work for. The leaders that I had were great, and, you know, really supportive. And when that time came, I was basically running the branch for Bristol, and we were sort of going through that transformation of moving towards hybrid working, flexible working, that sort of thing. And, you know, I was a champion for that. And I was leading by the front in terms of, you know, taking that flex you need, family first, all that sort of mentality. And that trickled down into the business. So by leading from the front meant that it was then authentic. And we're not saying work from home when you want to work, when you need to, sort of thing. It's like, well, if the leaders are doing it, then it's real. So I sort of had to own it myself at that point, but I had the support of my leaders to do that, if that makes sense.
That's so true. Yeah. I think in everything you do in your business, you know, if it's a top-down approach, like if the leaders aren't prepared to do something, yet they're asking others to do it, or it's an available benefit, but we don't use it, like instantly it feels like it's something you shouldn't do as an employee. Yeah. I remember when we first had a call, because we met in person, then we had a call on Zoom, and you were still there. And I think one of the things you said about Robert Half was like, it's nothing like the perception. Whenever you attracted talent, people thought it was this completely corporate beast, and you were like in this really cool offices, and it was actually it was a bit of like a digital startup kind of vibe. I remember you saying, like, what? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. And I think, again, it depends on the branch and the leaders, and, you know, you sort of create your own culture to some extent, but you've still got the guidance and the you know, I guess, frameworks that you've got to follow to, you know, fly the corporate flag and, you know, deliver the message that you need to deliver. But we found that a lot in Bristol, is that, you know, when we were trying to hire, it was really hard just to get decent people, because they saw Robert Half as this big corporate KPI driven juggernaut. And, you know, they do sort of look at the metrics more than most businesses, but I guess no more than any other listed company. Do you know what I mean? When you've got that sort of month on month, quarter on quarter shareholder value sort of mentality, you have to be KPI driven. It's not their fault, I wouldn't say, but it's a great learning ground, you know, and it puts you some rigor in you. It gives you something that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily get in a business that doesn't work in that way. So I think it's a great place to start. But yeah, we did struggle with that. So it's trying to sort of bring that to life. And that's when I started doing a lot more employer branding stuff and videos and trying to sort of bring the inside out to try and change that perception. But I think that perception is quite hardwired into a lot of people's minds.
I agree. And you know, it's not just Robert Half. There's a lot of companies in that camp that people have an instant feeling of, not sure. But there's some great people there and some great businesses.
There's pros and cons, you know. It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
You've got to be incredibly motivated, driven, resilient. You've got to be, tenacious, hardworking. You've got to want it, If you don't, go and find an easy life somewhere else.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But if you want to fast track and be successful, then it's a good place to be.
When it comes to that moment then, when you realise, you know what, I am going to part ways with the business. Can you take us back to when that was and how you came to that? Obviously, you mentioned it was about this impact piece, but can you tell us a bit more about that decision you made?
There's a few things to it. Yeah, I think when COVID struck and we were forced into lockdown, I furloughed probably 60-70% of my team. So I went from being a very operational director to on the tools, making 40 plus phone calls a day, really getting back down to the basics with my team. And that sort of gave me a bit more confidence again. It's like, I can do this. I haven't forgotten it. It's like the muscle memory of doing recruitment. I was like, I can do this. So that's what gave me a little bit of.
Did you enjoy it as well, getting back on some of those market facing conversations?
I love the BD side. Yeah. I think, and even when I was an operational director, I was still in as many pitches as I could be. I love selling retainers. I love winning exclusivity. I love the value proposition. All that sort of stuff is what gives me a kick. I still do today. So yeah, I did enjoy it. I mean, don't get me wrong. That was a horrendous time where, the business were instructing all of us to do 50 BD calls a day. And I had to lead by the front, and it was that glorious summer when it was beautiful. Sun was and I was stuck in my daughter's nursery, just sweating, working 6 a.m. till 7 p.m.
I was talking about this yesterday because I wasn't with my wife, I was with my ex at the time in a flat in East London, and I remember because I was running Hoxo and I worked like a lunatic. I didn't take a single day off, but I did give myself breaks and enjoy that. And I just had a dog and we enjoy. I remember thinking that weather was just mentally. It was what we needed, wasn't it? Without that, if it would have been raining every day in that period, I mean, I think there'd have been a hell of a lot more negativity than there already was.
Definitely.
I can't remember another year where it's ever been, especially early in I remember some really hot Julys or whatever, but it was like March, April, May, June. I think July it did come to an end because I moved to Manchester and it rained every day in July. But it was like 4 months of just pretty consistently every day sunny. I mean, crazy that. So
what breaks sound good though? What were they like?
What my breaks? Oh, they were a lot. I did this 75 hard challenge. Have you heard of that?
No.
Where you do for 75 days, you don't drink alcohol, you don't eat any cheat meals. I just didn't eat any takeaways or have anything. I didn't prepare.
Is that when you were running 5K every day?
I wasn't running 5K, but I was doing that was 2022 when I was running every day. But this was more, you had to exercise twice a day, minimum 45 minutes each session, and one has to be outside. No. So I had to be outside 45 minutes minimum, another one indoors or 2 outside. I had to drink 1 liter of water, 2 liters of water, or a gallon of water, one of them. You had to read 10 pages of a book. You had this plan. So in order to get that done, I did spend quite a lot of time outside. I was walking the dog. I was going out for runs. I was making them up. And I remember it rained once in that 75 days when I was outside. Once.
Amazing.
That's
amazing.
Nuts.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds glorious. My experience was quite different. I think that we had Esme at the time was like that toddler age. Yeah. When they just need 24/7 attention and entertainment, you can't just leave them plonked in front of a TV. Yeah. They haven't got the attention span. Yeah. So my wife was, I was working all those hours, hustling, hitting the phones, and she was, bless her, looking after Esme all day, stuck inside, Esme crawling up the walls. So every one of my breaks, it was like, here you go. Yeah. And I just take Esme off her hands. So then my breaks were not breaks. They were, looking after Esme. And she was not at the age where you could take her out and do stuff, and you couldn't do anything anyway. So I was literally, it was probably the hardest time and the most testing time in my whole life, really. Got a bit of sunshine on the weekend, though. That was nice.
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely I was going through a breakup and a divorce. So it wasn't all pleasure. It was like trying to process. I was trying to process how the hell I was going to get out of this relationship. That was kind of what I was going through. So it was, it weren't all fun, but I do look back on it as a really pivotal time in my life that actually, without it, I don't know where I'd be now, because it got me out of.
I think it got
me out of a situation that I wasn't happy.
Yeah, I think it was for so many people. And I say it all the time, when we're speaking to candidates, when we're speaking to clients, there's been a bit of an awakening in society as a whole. I think all of that time spent looking at four walls, thinking of, what is important in life. And that, for me was part of the reason which gave me lots more time to reflect and think. And, without that, huge team around me and just spending all that time just sat in that room, you do start to think, okay, maybe this could be done differently, or maybe I could find more purpose in my life. Whatever career you're in, I think it changed people's perceptions of what they want to do and what path they want to be on.
I realized straight away, I'm not going back to an office. Like, I knew straight away. And it literally was like within a week, I was like, this is for me. Getting up, walking the dog, coming back, working at home. I just felt good. Like, it just didn't feel, and I've still never done it. I've never gone back, and I don't think I never will. It was like a light bulb in my head. And I lived in London at the time, opposite a Central Line tube stop. So you can imagine, like, I used to get up and it'd be like bang straight on the tube, straight into the gym. And it was just, there was this like speed about everything. And you could see when I was like washing the pots, I could see the tube station, like people just piling in. So you just always felt like almost in it on a treadmill. And then that just all stopped. And that station was derelict for like, 2 months or whatever. And then I used to walk past it every morning thinking, that looks different, and the weather's sunny, and it all just felt really calm, and I just liked it. And obviously my life's nothing like what it was then, but I've kept some of the things for sure. So talking about you then, what you said, you got to a point where you were like, right, what did you decide, and when was it?
So it was almost the stars aligned, really. I wanted to, that gave me the confidence. Then I wanted to come back and card a really good sort of last year, record breaking year, and, hang my hat on, a really good finish. All the while, whilst sort of trying to think, okay, how am I going to do this? How can I afford to do it? And started saving and started thinking, right, what sort of cash am I going to need to set up? And my mum was a real good confidence booster. She's it still sits with me today. She said, Leo, you're really good at your job. If you go and start and fail, then another Robert Half will just recruit you tomorrow in the same type of level role. I was like, shit, I hadn't even thought.
And Robert Half would probably take you back. Like, there's not.
Yeah, I mean, we left on such good terms.
Yeah, I can tell you've got integrity, and like you're not a guy that's just ready to rip out the database kind of thing. Like, so.
No, I didn't take a single contact, and that was difficult, and it's very tempting. But if I'm building a business on the foundation of integrity and doing the right thing, stealing data is not a good way to start. I'm a big believer in karma.
Yeah.
So starting with a blank sheet of paper as well, tested my BD ability as well.
So when was it? When you actually started? What was the date you kicked on?
What actually happened leading on to that then sort of kicked me on even further is my dad passed away unexpectedly. So I came into some inheritance I wasn't expecting, which again, I appreciate is a position of privilege. Something good came out of something bad.
Yep.
Not everybody's going to be in that situation. But it just gave me a bit of cash or cushion to be able to afford to take that hit, because I was a director at Robert Half, running a few branches on decent income, on a single income household.
Your overheads would be high. There's no doubt. Yeah.
Oh, huge! Like the lifestyle and the costs that we've got were just too high. So it was going to take me a lot longer. So when that happened, I could just do it. The other alternative would, get a bank loan.
Yeah.
But that's what triggered it then. And then it really started that thought process. So from sort of October 2021, I knew I was going to do it. And then it took me until sort of January to hand in my notice, because I really wanted to finish strong. I really wanted to leave the team in a really good position, make sure the infrastructure was well set, finish on a high. And also it gave me time to really think seriously about what I want this brand to be, and what is my why, what are my values, how can I make this authentic to actually who I am and a reflection of what I believe in, rather than just another recruitment business with my name above the door. So that was quite a luxury, really, that I think a lot of people don't have. Is have a bit more time to think.
It was summer. It was definitely summer 21 when I met you, because the Euros were delayed a year, and it was during the Euros I was in Bristol. So yeah, it was around that time, wasn't it? A few months later, and then I can remember it like it was yesterday. But it does go. Time goes so quick. So paint the picture then. Early 22, you start the business. How did it look? And how did you come up with the name Core3?
When I handed in my notice, I was on a 3-month notice. So then I was put on garden leave, and I treated that like a 9 to 5 or longer than 9 to 5 job. And I was going into co-working space every day and working on the brand and the values and the position and what it was and the website and everything else. So then I got to the proposition of what Core3 is, and Core stands for conscious recruitment. And the whole idea of conscious is thinking more consciously about the long term, about the future, and it stems from the concept of conscious capitalism, which is around how traditional capitalism is broken. It's draining the resources of our planet and the people in it. Conscious capitalism is much more of a holistic view of, your community, your environment, your employees, your customers, and your supply chain. So that's where Core came from. And then the 3 is the 3 pillars of our purpose, which is people, planet, and progress. So people and planet is what it says on the tin. Progress represents equality and trying to level the playing field for disadvantaged and underrepresented people. So then we also give 3% of our revenue to each one of those 3 pillars of our purpose, and the client chooses where that 3% goes. So that's Core3.
Wow. And that, like you say, you spent the time. Did you then build the site yourself? How did you go about creating all that brand? Because you had a marketing background, so did you have the skills to do a lot of that yourself?
I'm not a technical marketeer. I was more of a socials and events and branding. So I had the sort of position on my mind, but I worked with a friend of a friend who is really talented, who went through this journey with me, and we sort of decided, we looked at other brands that we really, really liked, and I purposely avoided recruitment. So I was like, right, if we want to create something different, let's look at other businesses that we love and try to pick out what makes them great. So companies like Patagonia, Allbirds, really good forward-thinking businesses. And Patagonia was actually where I got that 3% idea from. At the time, they did 1% for the planet. They do a lot more than that now. But I loved how it was attached to revenue rather than profit. Yeah. Because if it's attached to revenue, you're held so accountable every single day. You can feel it every day. Your clients can feel it. Your team can feel it. And the business feels it. So it just changes the mindset of recruitment. It's like every placement you can feel, right, that's £300 that's gone to help young disadvantaged people in Bristol, or that placement has planted 500 trees today, which is pretty awesome. Yeah. It's not sort of dependent on how well I run my business. So if it's just a percentage of profit, it becomes an accounting exercise at the end of the year. If I don't make a profit, then we don't make an impact. Whereas this is, we've made that commitment from the start, and it's significant. It's, if we're running the business well, it will be 10 to 15% of our profit. When we're in investment mode, like we are at the moment, it's more like 40% of our profit. So it's a huge commitment. But I haven't really looked back since on that commitment. I think
as long as you are sensible and can run you got your eye on all areas of the business, I think it's a great move. I think if you're not someone who understands the difference between gross profit and net profit and has a good handle on your costs, then it could be a dangerous way of doing it, because you're making an impact, but you only make an impact for a short period of time until you go out of business, right? So I can see why people do it from profit, because it's basically saying we protect the business first, which then does have the impact. Whereas I can tell by the person you are, that's not a concern. I'm interrupting today's episode to give you a message from our brand new sponsor. Now, this company are called Untapped, and everyone knows that Hoxo, through this podcast, I've explained that we built our team internationally, heavily in South Africa. Okay. And I get questions all the time from clients and people who listen to the show, like, how have you done it? What was the process, etc. Well, I've partnered with a business that can ultimately reveal it all, share it all, and help you do the same, right? Because look, it's been a tricky year for the sector, and many of people through uncertain times have had to streamline operations. However, accessing low-cost resources internationally has proven to be a bit of a cheat code for some people, including Hoxo. But anyone who's tried it, like us, it's very difficult, a lot of work, process to get it right. So this company, Untapped, are one of the hottest companies in the market. They've helped Hoxo, they're helping our clients, and they specifically look at companies in the UK, US, Middle East, and Australia transition to using remote individuals and building full offshore sourcing and recruitment solutions. So they source talent pools from places like South Africa and the Philippines. And we're talking about experienced talent here. We're not talking about graduates with no experience. This is like people with 3 to 5 years recruitment experience, and integrate them into your UK team. So they work remotely, but plug into your UK team. They put around 3,000 candidates per month through an intense 4-stage interview and online testing process to find the top 1% or 30 people and secure these people for work with recruitment agencies like yourself. All candidates are benchmarked against UK competency frameworks and the way in which you would hire in the UK. So we're not talking about cheap for the sake of being cheap. We're talking about international, experienced people just living in lower cost locations. So it's a really simple process. If you want to work with these guys, you pay a deposit to kick off their search. They then provide a candidate shortlist in 14 days. And then you can put people through your own process to hire them permanently, or there's a freelance option. So if you just want to try before you buy, they can employ them. You pay a daily rate and it's a freelance option. Untapped are totally transparent with all the salaries and fees. We're talking about you'll still pay about 70% less than a UK equivalent in that role. So it's a no-brainer to complement your existing team, to handle surplus demand and ease cost pressures. If you're not using this to rip up your business and rebuild it with global resources, then you're probably going to fall behind eventually. So due to demand and capacity, they're only operating on a waiting list right now. So if you want to be part of their waiting list, go to www.tryuntapped.com and check out their information. Make sure you say that you listen to the RAG podcast, because they'll do you a very special deal as well. Right, go and check them out. Back to the show. In terms of the reality of starting up, you get the brand right, you spend all this time, which is quite cool. You're getting paid by Robert Half, so it's quite a cool way to spend your day. Obviously very attached to what you're doing and creative. What was it like when you actually then pick up the phone with a new name, with no database? You're not allowed to go after your old people. What did that genuinely feel like?
It was interesting because you're sort of testing out the proposition then for the first time. So, and it was really, really well received. And what I think for all the listeners really who are thinking of starting up their own, what you never really realize is how much people rally around you when you're starting up a business. They want to help. They want to give you leg ups. And I remember the first client I had was through a contact that I had for years, I'd worked with for years, and that contact was in my restrictive covenant. So, I wasn't going to work with that contact, but he wanted to meet up and just help me coach, because he's quite a good entrepreneur. So he sort of coached me through my business plan and my 5-year projections and all that sort of stuff. And he was at the time, he was just like, "Oh, do you know what so-and-so might be recruiting?" And I said, "Okay." Well, I gave him a call, and this was a contact I hadn't worked with for years, and was well out of restrictive covenants with. And we met up, and he was just like, "Leo, I'm looking for 5 accountants. Can you help?" And I was like, "Yeah." I haven't planned on launching the business yet, though. I was probably going to be ready to go in about 4 weeks. I haven't got a CRM yet. I haven't got LinkedIn Recruiter. I haven't got anything. But give me 24 hours, and I'll come back to you. So I rang up Vincherry, rang up LinkedIn, got everything switched on within 24 hours, hadn't even launched a website yet, sold 5 retainers on those 5 jobs. And that was a great confidence booster, because it was like cash straight in the bank, 14-day payment terms, and then we filled every job within, I say we, I was on my own at the time, but
unless you got Esme on, but Esme's on the resourcing.
It was great. I was 3 of them were purchase ledger jobs, super junior. Yeah. 2 of them were management accountant jobs. But at the time, I was, it doesn't matter. Absolutely brilliant. Doesn't matter. It's the first test, and everything worked really well. Really happy with the CRM. Really happy with our model. And then from there, it's just sort of rolled on in terms of the confidence and how we went about BD. I just got back to the basics. I've always been big on content. I know you are, and that was a big thing for me in terms of giving me brand awareness that otherwise wouldn't have existed. I think SEO and Google ranking, you're gonna have to wait 5 years for that to actually sort of pay off. Whereas having a good personal brand, suddenly everyone was aware of Core3, and that created quite a bit of inbound. But then with the actual BD itself, I was getting back to basics around just calling through switchboards, getting hold of people, really thinking, okay, let's focus on the new finance directors, the ones that are going to be making change, the ones that have just started, that are going to want to change their team or improve their team. And
what's your kind of, again, we don't need to go into like how you approach a phone call, but I'll start with how I always approached it, right? I always wanted to make people aware that I was in the game for the long term, and that it was going to be mutually beneficial to know each other when I was reaching out to someone new. So I never, I don't think I'll be honest, because I was in contract, I never led with a candidate. It just didn't work. Like people, if they weren't hiring, they weren't hiring. Like I've got this amazing guy. Unless I knew there was a project coming, every now and again I could do it. But it wasn't my angle was, look, I know people who know you. I'm aware of you. I'm very, impressed. I'd always make them feel good. I'm impressed by what you've done personally in your career. I've had a look on LinkedIn. I know people, and I'd try and drop a name or two, and I'd say, look, this is what I do. I'd love to buy you a coffee. This was back when in London I could do that, and I believe it's going to be mutually beneficial to know each other. Like I can't guarantee I've got anything for you right now, but I guarantee through your career, personally and as a hiring manager, I'm going to be useful to you. Can you make some time? And people just, I don't know, it didn't always work. But the hardest bit was getting people to listen to what you want to say. But once you got through that bit, I felt like I always made impact positively, as opposed to that classic. Guess what was your approach to a new finance director that when you started it?
My approach has always been trying to shift that balance from master servant to partner.
Yeah, and which is the mutually beneficial bit that I say.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, at Core3, we've got all sorts of reasons to call and value add that's not just recruitment. But before I had Core3, like my go-to was speaking to them as a candidate, because every finance director out there or CFO out there is going to want to have a chat about opportunities for them. The more senior you get, the less opportunities there are. It's like a pyramid. So they don't have many people calling them saying, hey, do you want to have a chat about your career?
Yeah.
So it completely shifts that balance. Suddenly you can help them. And then, it's sort of flipping that conversation once you've had a really good dialogue, understanding, what they're all about and what they're looking for. And it's like, hey, well, what about your team? How's things going at X business?
Yeah.
And it's just really natural, really easy.
So it's just having being able to give them a good enough experience that they feel like, even if you're not going to help them now, you might do in the future. Equally, you're the sort of person they would put their trust in to support them building their own team.
Yeah, and you've got to manage expectations. I often say, I wish I could have a job a month for you, Sean. But, as you know, once you get above 150k salaries, there's just not as much out there. But let me be your eyes and ears in the market. Let me understand, the types of opportunities that you'd be open to. And then I can maybe open some doors with my network and set up some introductions over the course of the time we work together. How does that sound?
Yeah.
And it's suddenly, a little bit, and we do genuinely do that as well. I want to build relationships with FD candidates because we fill FD jobs. So it's genuine. But it's just a much better way in.
How did that first year go then? So 2022, you get off the ground with 5 retainers. You were working from home, or were you already in a co-working space on day?
I had to get myself in the office.
I suppose when you got a little 3-year-old or whatever, it's just it's not even worth being at home.
No, definitely not. So I got into a co-working space, had a hot desk, and it was good. I mean, I because I had a team of 35 people at Robert Half, I was very conscious that I was going to get lonely quickly. So, and I get my energy from people.
Yeah.
And I think every recruiter probably does. That's why you choose this sector. So I wanted people to bounce off, and because I had a bit of cash reserve, I was like, right, let's just hire 2 people in one go. Let's go for month 1, 2 hires, and train them up together.
That was in your first month?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a bold move.
Yeah. And looking back, I think I would have done it again, but I probably would have taken my time a bit more. I got a little bit excited, and I was almost grateful that they wanted to work for Core3. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, you want to work for me? What do you mean? I've got no brand, I've got no database, I've got nothing. I'm
shaking my head, by the way, because I've just been through that. And I know so many people, you get so flattered by the fact that in the early days, someone sees you as a viable business, and you're like, just fucking, who else do you know? Who else do you know? We'll bring them all.
Yeah, exactly. So, made a couple of wrong hiring choices early on, but then very quickly sort of built confidence in the brand, and our reputation in the market was really starting to turn some heads. And we actually, pretty much all of the hires that we've made have approached me or approached Core3 from the content and the LinkedIn and the stuff that we're doing. They see that we are genuinely different.
Yeah.
And it's real. It's not just words on a wall. So yeah, that was when I mean the first sort of significant hire that knocked on my door was Callie. And when I say significant, I'm not saying the others weren't, but the first person with significant recruitment experience.
So the first 2 you brought in were inexperienced?
One was a business development manager, fully remote, single mum, never worked in an office before. Wow. And she was brilliant, great relationships, great at sales, but she ideally needed to be in it with me at least 3 days a week to learn the job. And it just didn't work mutually on that one. And the other one was 6 months of recruitment experience. But that hire probably just wasn't aligned in terms of our values, and that's one that I had to be quite firm on. But then Callie, she rang me out of the blue and just said, I've left Reed. I billed 340k in my first year, and I left to do tech sales, but I hate it. I miss recruitment. I want to get back into recruitment. And a friend of mine at Reed loves your content and put me in your direction. So are you hiring? I was like, oh my God.
Oh, this is
yes.
Is this real?
Let's. I know, and that's literally, I couldn't believe it. I was like, who does 340k in your first year on perm? And then I found out she was restricted to salaries up to 25k. I was like, are you serious? So I was very, and so that was like 10 perm placements a month. So I was very careful on referencing and making sure that it was all legit, and it was. And she's just like a rocket. She's awesome, and she's fast tracked, and she's a manager now, and she's amazing.
So was it back to just you by the time she came in then, or was there
No, there was 3 of us at that time.
Right.
And then she joined, and then we had 2 more join. By the end of the year, we had 5. So I had a grad who came in. And then I had Lewis Cordis, who I worked with previously at Robert Half. He left Robert Half about 5 years before me, went to a smaller boutique, and then we got in touch again, and and joined. And he's done amazingly well over here. Actually,
what's the proposition? So if someone, especially in year one, because that's I think one of the questions a lot of people have when they're like, or they doubt themselves, I'm leaving a bigger business or an established business, whatever the size. It's already difficult to attract talent. Like you said, Robert Half found it difficult. Why the hell is anyone going to work for me in year 1 or year 2 or year 3? What was the proposition that you were giving to the people to get them over the line?
I think the first thing that really drew people in was the ethos and what we're all about. It's different. There's a lot of people out there that are demoralized. They're getting hit over the head with the KPI stick. Maybe they're not, but they're doing incredibly well, but they've just lost their why. It's just a bit soulless. It's becoming transactional, not relationship-led or purpose-driven. So there's a lot of people out there just seeking more from recruitment, and there should be more. It's a business of people for people at the end of the day, and I think often that's lost, and it can be seen as a transaction, and that's it. And that's pretty mindless, if I'm honest. So brings the sort of initial attraction in, and then once we've got to speak to them, I guess it's like any startup. If you're reporting directly into a founder, then the sky's the limit, really, in terms of where you can go. I was very clear on a 5-year plan. I had it all mapped out. I drew a structure chart of what it will look like in 5 years' time, with where that will go in terms of revenue, headcount, number of management opportunities that translates to, number of director opportunities that translates to. So it's really clear. So anyone that met me could see it. It's like, well, if in 5 years we're going to need 3 directors, we're going to need 9 division managers, we're going to need 6 senior managers, and you're coming in as employee.
Would you say that the ability to create such an in-depth plan came from your time at Robert Half, or was it also your mum and everyone? Like, because I don't know many people in year one who put together such an in-depth plan or capable of it, because they just don't know what they're going to create. Yeah,
I think definitely Robert Half was. I mean, once you get to director level, you're constantly creating your own budgets. You're in charge of multiple P&Ls. I've got a forecast regularly. Once you get up to that level, it's in your nature. It's you got to plan. You got to, especially in a listed business. It's got to be robust and well thought through. So you look at things like per desk average billings, what that equates to in terms of revenue, what are the hiring triggers going to be, how are we going to scale this properly. I think people that joined maybe bought into that plan because they maybe haven't seen something like that in such detail from a startup, and it's just really clear.
Yeah, it's really, and clarity gives genuine excitement, I think, for the right people, because they're like, I can see it, I can feel it. Like, that's where I'm heading.
Yeah, and the other thing is we're setting up an EMI scheme with share options. So the leaders in the business will be well incentivized as we scale. And then in 5 years' time, the plan was to go down the employee ownership route, which is a place. Yeah, so everybody will have a stake in the business. They'll all have a share of voice, and they'll reap the rewards for that. So that's another big thing that we've got in the plan that really aligns to B Corp, aligns to who we are, aligns to our culture, because everybody does genuinely have a voice. But if you've actually got shares, then your voice is even more powerful. So I think that's another selling point. But right at the start, I didn't have that plan of shares and everything else. So I was just using my 5-year plan of where it will go to in terms of progression and opportunity more than that, really.
What did you get wrong in that first year?
Well, I think it was those, like the early hires, just not taking my time, just being flattered, and feeling grateful that they would want to work for me. But other than that, I think year one went really, really well. I forecast 250K because I thought, how am I going to build this? I'm on my own. 250 would be a result. We ended up doing 515. And probably 50% of that was my billing and 50% from the team. So we surpassed expectations in terms of revenue, and then profitability was great because we were so nimble, kept really agile. Didn't commit to a big office or anything like that early on. Stayed nimble. So that really then kicked us on for year 2, which is where we just finished, where that's like investment mode. We've hired some significant heads now. We've got 9 consultants between us. We've got 78 years combined recruitment experience, so they're all really experienced people, which isn't cheap. So no. That impacts your bottom line, but we will get the return on that then going into year 3. So that's the plan, really.
So talk us through that second year. Then you make that. It's a great year, and like you say, you over exceed expectation. Are you the sort of person that reflects on success and enjoys it and celebrates it at that point?
I think I do when I do my old LinkedIn post, Core3 turns 1 today, and you list out the achievements. You're like, shit, this is pretty cool what we've done, and even the ESG impacts. We did the 2-year post last week or whatever it was, and we've got given £45,000 back to our community since we started 2 years ago. We've planted 22,000 trees. We've removed 320 tons of carbon from the atmosphere. That all those things are things that, you know, when you take a moment to reflect, they're amazing. I think the biggest thing for me, which gave me that real wow factor in terms of what we've achieved, was when we went to the REC Awards, and we won the Startup of the Year over there, which was just unbelievable. Did not even have a think we'd have a shot. You know, you look in the room and there's some amazing businesses there, and to get Startup of the Year was just awesome. And it was an amazing moment, because I think it was 3 years before, my mum was there, and she walked away with the REC Lifetime Achievement Award. And my mum was there at the awards when I won Best Startup, and it was just like, amazing. Oh, this is pretty cool. So that was the sort of penny drop moment where I just realised we're onto something special here, and that really sort of given me confidence to sort of kick on.
How did you find the balance between work and family in year one? So when it comes to the baby, you know, not baby, sorry, but your young daughter, you know, being a good husband, that kind of stuff. Because if I look back at when I started Hoxo, I was living with my partner at the time, my ex, but I didn't have any kids. We weren't married. I'd bought a property, but I could just crack on at times and just really commit to it. I think if I was starting a business with what I've got now, I think it would be very different.
Yeah, I think I've always worked long hours. You know, growing up, there's a decade at Robert Half. I'm not going to be shy of some hours. So I purposely didn't change anything in terms of my work schedule. So I'm used to, you know, starting at 8, 8:30, finishing at 6, 6:30. So I personally haven't changed that. I do a lot more pickups and drop-offs and finish earlys and, you know, work from home than I probably did then. But when I'm home, I'm home. And I don't open my laptop in the evenings. I don't open my laptop on the weekends. So I just stick to that discipline that I had at Robert Half. The only thing that I think has changed from then to now is that when I'm home, I'm not always fully home as I was before. I think I struggle with being truly present.
Yeah, because you can turn your phone off and your laptop off, but that doesn't mean your brain switches off.
Yeah, your head's spinning. So I think it's like that, you know, that's something I need to work on. And I think, you know, I'm got much more into my fitness and my health and everything like that. Since the pandemic, that is a massive help for me. Mindfulness and meditation works for me, but I just never find the time to do it. I wish I need to work on that. But yeah, it's just finding ways to be sort of more present, more healthy, more there when you're home. I think is the problem when you're a founder, because it's very easy just to spin off into a minefield of thought.
Yeah, and I often found that when I go for a run, it can be the time where I. Sorry, I've got an Amazon guy at the door. This is remote podcasting. Put it on the floor, mate. Yeah, that'd be great. So I often find that when I go for a run is often the time, or when I'm at the gym, is often the time I think about work the most. So like if I try, even if I walk the dog. So if what I typically do is I finish work, I do 6 o'clock on a Monday and Tuesday. I do 5 o'clock on a Wednesday and Thursday, and then we finish at lunch on a Friday. So I have like a really clear structure that my wife knows. But what I always do is after I finish work is I'll take the dogs for a walk. And the dog walk will actually be a decompression of the day, but it can often bring up so many thoughts and ideas and things to think about that then the next 10 or 15 or 20 minutes in the house, I'm not quite there. And I'm learning. I mean, it's such a journey, mate. Like you never. But one thing we did recently, I mean, my stepkids are a bit older than your daughter, so they're 9 and 10, and they've got iPhones from their dad, which I would never have bought them at that age, but that's a podcast in itself.
Yeah.
But what we were trying to get them off their phones in the evening, right? And it was a bit of a battle. 6:30 was the deadline. What I realized was actually I've just put the power in their hands. So I said, you've now got to take my phone and my wife's phone away at 6:30. You've got to hide them all. They've got to hide all the phones and then give them us back when they go to bed. So it's incredible, the difference. 2 weeks ago, I'm literally like battling, like she's running up the stairs, my stepdaughter, because she just wants to finish that game or whatever. Now at 28 minutes past 6, I'm getting like a tap on my shoulder. Where's your phone? They're chasing
awesome.
mummy.
I'm gonna have to try that.
Mate, it's amazing. And like they're hiding him. The other night I found my phone in the microwave. I was like, thank God he didn't turn it on. But like they're having a bit of fun with where they put them. And again, I can't do anything even if I want to. Like literally, I can't respond to an email even if I want to. So I think it's really important that you maintain that. And I know I don't have any doubt you will. But the amount of founders I've interviewed, especially the ones that have scaled in the past, they missed out on these times. Like they wouldn't. They're open about the fact they weren't present. They didn't enjoy. They didn't have time with their kids, and a lot of them say they wouldn't change it because that's where they are now. But I mean, I don't know about you, but that's just not an option for me. Like, it's not an option.
Definitely not. No. And the weekends, Esme and I are going off on adventures all the time, and my weekends are for her and for my wife really, and we spend quality time together. So definitely not out on the town as much as I used to be.
Yeah.
Too old for that these days.
Definitely. So second year then, how's that come together? Give us an overview of what's the difference in obviously you've put more investment in. So what has the impact been in bringing in these recruiters that contribute to this 78 years experience?
So it's good. I think we've learned a hell of a lot in the second year. We went from hot desking to having our own private office, which really forced us to focus on culture more than ever. So when there's 4 or 5 of you in the room and it's a small room, if you've got one person who's in a bit of a mood that day, you can really feel it. That's 20-25% of your culture. Yeah. So every huff and puff, it's like it's there. So we really had to focus on culture and values and making sure that everybody's aligned to that and they're bringing the energy and their game face, and we're working together as a team. We're bringing the positivity and all sorts of things we did to transform the culture and really make it healthy, which is probably a podcast for another time. But that was a big focus. We've focused a hell of a lot on L&D. We brought in Victoria Sprott, who is ex-Robert Half. She's awesome at sort of developing our leadership infrastructure. So she's focusing with me on sort of developing that next wave of leaders so that then we can really start to scale going into year 3, year 4. So we've got three or four people sort of on management training or in mind for management training at the moment, which will then enable us to kick on to that next level. And revenue wise, we've just shy of $1 million for year 2. Which is where we want it to be really. So yeah, I feel good. I think there's so much more latent potential in that team that we've got right now without even having one single extra hire. Yeah. So we're focusing a lot on developing those people, really solidifying our product and our service, and making sure that it's as good as it possibly can be then before sort of kicking on again with the hiring. So really London is sort of the main opportunity for hiring in the next couple of months, which we've got someone in the pipeline for. So yeah, that's year 2 really.
Amazing. What's the need for London?
It's just a huge opportunity. I think it's a massive market. I've seen that from a distance when I was at Robert Half. There's some great people there. It's a great way to extend our impact. Initially, I started thinking, do we just create a hub in Bristol for the whole of the UK? And I think that's possible for certain regions, but we're big on face-to-face and building the relationships and getting in front of people. And we won't work jobs unless we met the clients. We won't help candidates unless we've met them.
Even if would you not just rely on Zoom now for that?
Yeah. So for candidates, definitely. And for clients sometimes, but we ideally want to get down and walk the floors and get a feeling of the culture. Yeah. And I think you can get away with that in certain regions, and you could plan trips up to Manchester and do a day of meetings and come back and do it that way from a hub. But for London, it's just so vast. and complex, I think you've got to be there to really make any sort of dent in it. And it's just been an opportunity hire that has knocked on my door that, it could be a game changer. So I think it's an opportunity that we're going to grab hold of. Touch wood,
And
it all goes
what
well.
would be the plan? Is it to put someone in an office and build around them, like almost like you did 2 years ago, and replicate it in London?
Yeah.
And then would that mean any roles in London that you guys have serviced would pass over to them, and then you'd focus purely on the southwest?
Yeah, and most of our team are focused on the southwest. We've got one consultant at the moment just focusing on London, so that person would report into this person. But then this new person would scale the team based in London.
So is it going into year 3 now then? Was it April time when you started the business?
Yeah.
Before we started, you said you've actually had one of the most challenging quarters you've had. Like, it's been a tough time. How would you reflect on the early 2024?
Yeah, it has been tougher than expected. So I sort of see that as an opportunity in a way. I'm leaning into it as a way to really sort of focus on our process, how we're going about things, our products, our service delivery, upskilling the team, making sure they're as well versed as they need to be in our USPs and our value prop and everything else. So I feel like it's just going to make us really slick and tight in terms of how we're running the business, which was needed because we've been sailing on this wave, for this long. Yeah, it's been an awesome ride, but did I look at KPIs once? Probably not. Do you know what I mean? And we treat people like grown-ups where they're trusted implicitly here. So I'm not naturally a KPI animal, even though I've come from Robert Half. But it's forced me to start to look at that.
I look at KPIs though, like based on what it says, a key performance indicator. Because unless you look at the data that leads to deals consistently, it's very hard to you're just taking people's anecdotal stories that they think they're going to do a deal, or you're looking at the very bottom of the funnel at what's at offer stage or interview, and there are icebergs that come in the distance. Then I don't know, we track everything, and we're not bashing people over the head with it in our business, but we're very clear on what we want to hit because we know we've got years of data to prove that this leads to this. It's not an if, it's a when.
Yeah, and I think it's not that I don't believe in them. It's just I'm not naturally that sort of leader. Do you know what I mean? I probably need in future a COO who's shit hot at that. But that's not me. So I have to force myself to do it. But I think I believe in metrics or KPIs that actually mean something. So we talk about ratios, we talk about conversion rates, we talk about what does it take to pick up a job, how many calls to how many meetings, how many jobs, and then you're having those proper meaningful conversations rather than saying just do 50 calls a day. Yeah. And then that's mindless, and you're going to demotivate people. So we're trying to create that more sort of collective goal-based way of working at the moment, where everybody understands what their ratios are and what that means to them and their personal goals. So it makes it much more personal to them rather than we're just hitting you over the head with a KPI stick because we want you to do better. It's not about that. Yeah.
No. Yeah, we look at the kind of daily. We do an end of day report with our sales teams, and it's it's what did you it's not just the numbers, because anyone can say I made 45 calls or whatever. It's the date, it's the qualitative stuff. So it's we look at the conversations they've had and ask why, what was good about that one, what wasn't good about that one, and they have to analyze that and present that in the morning every day, and it's worked so well with that daily focus. It's really simple, but
that's more like a coaching exercise, isn't it?
Yeah, because all the data's in the CRM automatically anyway. So we could literally see what they've done. But the difference of getting them to review it and then present it every single morning makes them mindful and aware of what they're doing well or not doing well. And they're very open when they're like, I fucked that up, I didn't do well there. And so it's that meeting's probably stretching into about an hour's worth of time every day now. I'm not in it, my business partner runs it with the team, but I'm the difference in our business since that meeting is just night and day. It's nuts. So that's something that I believe, that people think, oh, I don't want to spend so much time in the morning. Get cracking. It's like, yeah, but get cracking is missing. You're missing out on what you did yesterday. You're not learning from it. You're just a busy fool off it. When it comes to the brand you've built and the LinkedIn work, and like, how important is that stuff to you? Because you got the cool Rode mics, and your office setup is lovely, and you're doing a podcast, and you clearly get the same vibe that I've got. But why? What does it matter to you?
I think it's awareness. I think it's you've got the sales side, which is BD and picking up the phone, but then you've got the marketing side, which is awareness and brand and building something. And then sort of what underlies all of that is then the authenticity. Because I think you can have sales, you can have marketing, but then the personal brand stuff, just people get to see who you really are and actually your personality and what you care about. And when you're doing it consistently, like, actually, he's not faking that. That's actually how he feels. So you build sort of trust, I think, where in a market where trust is lost. So it really helps us raise awareness, reach more people that we never would have reached before. And it doesn't cost anything to do personal brands. Do you know what I mean? We spend an awful lot on marketing, but we haven't had one inbound job from all the marketing money we spent. It's all come from personal brand. So, LinkedIn and content, I'm a big believer in. And then value is the other one. So that's the podcast, and trying to sort of be that authority in the market and trying to have a voice, and I guess similar to what you're doing with the RAG. So yeah, I just naturally love using that. Is it the right side of your brain? I always forget. I don't know. It gives me stimulation. So I like the sort of idea side of it, and how do we change the narrative in recruitment?
100%. Something I've learned over the years of working with so many different recruiters is actually the bit about being authentic and share it. That's probably the bit that's put so many people off. Like, they want to just pick up a process that you've given them or a bit of content you've given them and to put it out and then just run. Like, they want to just follow. They don't want to lead. And there's an element of leadership when you take responsibility for your own brand, because what you're saying is, I'm in control of, when you're given a marketing message to put out automatically, or you copy and paste it, that's like being told to go and, put that plate away in that cupboard. Whereas when you're responsible for your own message, your own voice, your own network, I was genuinely shocked by the amount of people in recruitment that don't want that. They're not interested in that. And I'm like,
I think there's a lot of fear factor as well. I think people overthink it, and they want it to be a perfect post, or they're not naturally a writer, and you don't have to be. Do you know what I mean? And I think something you said a while ago resonated with me, that you don't have to be a thought leader. You just have to be a thought contributor.
Yeah.
So all of those conversations that you're having with candidates, clients every day, you're giving advice every single day. Just post it. Yeah. It's like you don't have to overthink it. Just get it out. Being
a leader is crippling to people. It's the thought of being a leader. Like, oh, I'm not there yet. It's like, cool, but just contribute. Just if you're in the game on the phone, you should be in the game online. That's how I look at it. Like, if you're prepared to pick up the phone and have a conversation with someone, then share it. But it the reason
that leads to calls. Do you know what I mean? It's like every call we make now, people are like, oh, I've heard of Core3. I like what you do, and I see what you're doing online. So every call is a warm call. Then you suddenly got almost the power of a big brand like Rob Half, because you're doing content. It's like they know who you are, as long as you're connecting with the right audience.
And that's why we exist. That's why my business exists outside of the RAG. It's putting in that process for people and then giving them the team and support, because not everyone can take it like you have and just do it. The team we've built surround recruiters and with support and love, and say, look, you're good enough to do this, and give them, because it's three things. It's coming up with the idea, it's then having the confidence to execute, and then it's having a process to follow to do it consistently. Because anyone can do one thing well, but when they feel good about something, but it's doing it day in, day out, or week in, week out. And that's what we've built a business around. And, we love it, because when we do have an impact and we see brands like yours and doing these great things, it's like, that's why we exist. Because I believe that the industry's full of great people. I don't believe it's this industry full of sharks. There are people out there like that, but the ones I want to work with they're like you. They want to build a great business. They care about why they're doing it. They want a culture that people actually want to work within. They don't want to hire 100 people and churn 99. They want to actually create a business that people enjoy. And it's not just about the money. Money's a great byproduct, but it's not just about that.
Yeah, it's often the minority that let the majority down.
100%.
And I think it's like when
people see it the other way around.
When you think of any bad experience, you're 7 times more likely to tell others about it. Like when you have a customer complaint or whatever. So I think, that's just snowballed over the years, and recruitment's got a bad name, but there are some great people in the industry.
Agreed. I know so many of them, and I'm lucky. I feel very lucky. In terms of your future then, if we're just going to go, right, if we brought you back in a year, Leo, at the end of year 3, which we could do, it'd be fun. Tell me what do you think we'll be saying?
I think for year 3, I'd like to be in a position where we've got some really good leaders now established and ready to build their teams. So then to sort of scale into that next level. I'd like to think that London would be, at least a headcount of 3, a total headcount 15 in the business. And we're well on our path to our 5-year plan, which is by the 5-year mark, we want to be, GP of 3 million. We want to have 25 heads. We want to be giving £100,000 a year back to our local community. Wow. And we want to be at that point, hopefully exploring the employee ownership path. So that's the plan. If the market might have some other plans for us, then it might take 6 years, but that's the plan.
So clear, so positive is a word that comes from you, I think, when I meet you and whenever I've interacted with you. It's just a really positive message. I've got no doubt whether it takes 5-6 years, I mean, I think that's actually academic in the long run, but I think you'll get there, mate. And I think people listening to this will be rooting for you and will be inspired because, and one thing you've done there is you've gone 5 years to 3 million, which to some people doesn't actually sound that much. I mean, it's £3 million, by the way, which is insane. If you think about it, it's a lot of cash, but it's a really, and 25 heads, it's sustainable growth. You're not like trying to be that hockey stick unicorn. You're saying, I'm building a great business around great people sustainably, again, just like the mission. And I think more people need to think that way. They don't, it's an ego thing to be like, I need 100 heads fastest in the country. Like, why?
Yeah, I think you end up, if you grow too fast, you let people down and they're under supported. And, if you do it at the right pace, you can still ingrain the culture, the values, the support, the development, make sure people still feel that way. So I think it's a healthy goal, still aspirational, but healthy. I think it's striking that balance where, it's sanity, not vanity.
Agreed. Leo, I always ask the question, I know the answer will be, but if anyone's listening who wants to reach out, who says, look, I love that story, could I just pick your brains on anything, whether it's to do, we haven't even touched on the detail of being a B Corp or anything, there's so much we could talk about, but if anyone's like, look, I would love to pick your brains, are you okay if I just tag you on LinkedIn and they reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. All for it. I think there's not enough people help each other in this sector. I think everyone works in silos. So if people can communicate and work together a lot more, then hopefully we can move the needle on how people feel about the recruitment sector.
I agree. I'm sure people will reach out to you, mate. Thanks so much. And we will get you back on in the future, okay?
Awesome. Cheers, mate.
Top man. Thank you as always for listening to today's show. I truly hope that you got value from it. Honestly, it's the only reason I take time every week to ensure that my audience, you guys, future and existing recruitment owners, you're learning from each other to make this industry that I love so much stronger. And today's episode is brought to you by my business, Hoxo. I'm the CEO and founder, and we're on a mission to help brand recruitment agencies and their people better. I want to help people have the tools to stand out in the most competitive markets in the world. We're currently working with over 350 recruitment agencies and 5,000 of their consultants right now, helping them to build their personal brands, to consistently win more business, attract talent, and just become that go-to recruiter in the market. Now, we do have a huge coaching program, but a lot of people don't know we also manage the brands of a lot of founders, and we can do the rebrand of that company organizational piece as well. So if your recruitment agency either needs help to look and sound exactly how you want it to, or your leadership and consultant level need to get out there and drive more traffic back to that website, to the business, and start using LinkedIn to generate more revenue, then you should definitely be reaching out to us. If that sounds of interest, please do visit www.hoxomedia.com or drop me, Sean, a personal message on LinkedIn. I love hearing from RAG listeners. I would love to talk to you. Look forward to it. So I'll see you again next week with another episode. Catch you soon.